I'm going to introduce everyone, and just how I'm looking at it right now, I see Naledi. So Naledi, tell us who you are.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I see some familiar faces and names. Really good to have you in the room. My name is Naledi Masilo. I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. Well, my name's Naledi Tuto Masilo, my full name.
Hey.
I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. I am a Sotho/Xhosa woman, and I'm currently a student at the New England Conservatory of Music, and I'm studying jazz voice performance.
Hey.
Yeah. Also, I'm the founder of the Dreaming Girls Foundation, which helps young girls and women interact with social issues in their communities and finds ways to bridge the gap between like socio-political development and the arts. So yeah, that's me. Hi.
Hi. And then I see Joanne.
Hey there.
Hey.
I'm Joanne Daley, originally from London, grown up pretty much here in the US, but of Caribbean background,
Hey.
Montserrat specifically, Antigua. And I'm a body worker. I'm a birth doula on hiatus right now, and a student of art and culture and consciousness. I used to really be into consciousness as far as it relates to Rastafari and some other things, but I'm really happy to be here today and sharing with you.
Hi. Hey. And then we have Queen B. Scott.
Hi, everyone. I am Danielle Queen D. Scott. I'm an MC, I'm a singer, producer, music director, and I'm also the assistant chair of Berklee College of Music Ensemble Department.
Get it.
Right. The best department, don't tell anybody. And you can catch my music right now on soundcloud.com/Queen D. Scott. And I'm working on a project called Thelma and Louise, which is an exploration of Black female identity and the balance between the yin and the yang of it.
Yeah, thank you. And because I see, you know who I'm looking at, Yvette. Hi, talk to us.
Greetings, family. Greetings to those joining us. Peace, my sisters. I am looking forward to this time we spend together. Saludos a la gente que está afuera.
Hey.
Están para hablar español porque esto va a ser algo bilingüe, así que vamos a gozar. My name is Dept, Lepolata Duque Modestin. I'm from love, joy, sweetness, resiliency, pride, and that is Colón, República de Panamá, Rainbow City, and that says it all for me.
Hey.
Poet, activist, storyteller, educator, spiritual activist, clinician, just really trying to create new ways to say I'm Black and I'm proud.
Hey.
That's it. That's what I do.
Thank you, Linda.
Sorry, I had to unmute for a bit.
No worries.
My name is Linda. I am from Philadelphia. I currently live in Boston. My family's from Kenya. You'll be seeing my artwork throughout this gathering. I'm really glad to have everyone here. Just as a housekeeping note for the audience members, first of all, welcome. We're really happy to have you here.
Yeah.
If you could mute your microphones, that would be great.
Thank you. Thank you.
And let's see, what else about me? So I am a visual artist. I do calligraphy. I draw circles. So like my Instagram handle is circles and letters, but you will see most of my knitting on there. I'm also a musician. I play with a Brazilian percussion group, Grooversity, for people who are in the Boston area. We used to be called Bloco Afro Brazil. It's with Marcus Santos. And it's a lot of fun. I've played with them for 5 years. So yeah, really glad to be here with you all.
Amen. And you just said I draw circles. When they see your art, they're going to see it's not just circles.
I mean, you know, it's a bit of an understatement, but yeah.
Thank you, Mama. And I'm Masacote.
Hello. I am Ana Masacote. I am an Afro-Latin dance specialist.
Yes, you are.
I am the co-founder of Masacote Entertainment. I also have been blessed to be able to run a project called Yo Soy Lola. I see the creative director on the call here today, so I'm excited.
Hey.
And I'm also a founder of a project called Despelotics and an online dance company called Dance to Power. So I'm all over dance. I really believe that dance can really be a medium for change and changing perspectives and the way that we see the world through movement. So it's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Mama.
And I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
And all this beauty, I'm so grateful. And then you had a project called Lola, and then we actually have a Lola with us, Jasmine Vialet.
Hello, everybody. Thank you guys for joining in. I know some of my friends are in here, so hey, y'all. My name is Jasmine Vialet. My stage name is Lola Vialet. It's my middle name. I'm a singer, songwriter. I'm 20 years old. I'm going to be 21 in August. Woot woot.
August when?
August 12th. August 12th.
The Leos in the house. Wait, can I take a moment right now? Let me just take a moment because I don't want to break your heart, but we're talking about birthdays. There are 3 people who just introduced themselves who are either had a birthday or will have a birthday. So happy birthday to Linda, whose birthday was 2 days ago. Hey. And then happy birthday to Joanne, whose birthday, no, let me do it in order. To Danielle, whose birthday is tomorrow.
Oh.
And then happy birthday to Joanne, whose birthday is Wednesday. Okay. Housekeeping done. Jasmine, yes. You were saying.
Awesome. But yeah, singer-songwriter, content creator. I love to vocal arrange. I love to draw. I love to write poetry. Yeah, just love art. I love art. And that's kind of where I center my everything around. But yeah, I study at Berklee College of Music. I'll be a senior this year. And I'm kind of representing my generation, the younger generation here. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. I just want to start. So yeah.
Thank you. So the introductions have been done, and everyone will get to see you and feel you a little bit more throughout the conversation. But I want to hand this over to Yvette for some opening libation. So Yvette, if you want to unmute.
You know, that's going to be the practice for the night, right?
To unmute. Exactly, UnSilenced, unmute. Amen.
So Nedelka and I spoke earlier, and I thought, you know, it'd be a wonderful way to open this time we have together to give thanks for our voices being heard, as they will be tonight and every day. And also to give thanks in the midst of what we're going through right now, and that we were still able to follow through with this commitment and lean on the light and love of the ancestors. So just wanted to offer libation for those whose shoulders we stand on, those who we call out tonight as we spend time sharing our most inner self with a wider audience, and that we continue to triumph forward, onward and forward in our birth-given light. Ashe. Ashe. Ashe.
Sisters, please unmute, because you know how we flow. We did this already. So be jumping in where you feel like it. You know, mute if you need to, but definitely open up. And the first question that I would like us to talk about are, what are the kinds of traumas we as women have experienced? I can call on you, or you could jump out.
Well, I think that's a really broad question.
Yeah.
So I was just taking time to kind of try and compartmentalize how I could answer or what I could say. But I think if I was to bring it into a broad scale, but like smaller, I would say there's a lot of psychological traumas that we've had to experience from society and within ourselves and amongst each other. For some people, physical traumas as well. I think physical traumas does not necessarily always have to account to like somebody else inflicting abuse on yourself, but you're inflicting abuse on your own body as well. I think that's something a lot of women struggle with. A lot of, I don't know if it's a young woman thing. I think that's something that lasts throughout, you know, your whole life. Those are the two that immediately came to mind. I don't know if anyone else has.
Yeah, I think, well, you know, you and Jasmine are the babies here. We love it. We love it. We love it. I think I can speak for all of us that we love it. These are things that we can take through a lifetime if we don't manage them, because there are certain, you know, body shaming things that I'm just now finally releasing. And then I know women older than me are still holding onto it. And it is a form of self-abuse. It is. Anybody else? Is someone dealing with POTS? If so, please mute. But comment.
Listen to it's Naledi's in it. Want me to send you the link?
Nedelka, you can mute them.
Got it. Done deal.
All right.
Done deal.
Come on, technology.
Okay. At least you know they're a fan of Naledi.
I know.
This is gonna happen.
Yeah.
We're figuring it all out, and that's what I love about the courage piece of this, is the courage to push through. We're supposed to be in a space, and here we are figuring it out.
This is us being us in our realest way. There we go.
Period.
I wanted to touch on what you said earlier. Run your name one more time.
Naledi? Me?
Naledi? Okay. I think I would say for me personally, I think that I've experienced a lot of different types of traumas. Like you said, it's super broad. It's like a really broad question. But recently I just recovered, I am recovering over vocal trauma. I realized I had nodules maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And I think that was something really different for me, especially because since that is literally how I create, that is my root of how I create, is my voice. And when I feel like when the sources that God has given you are temporarily paused, right, or something is done to them, I feel like it's definitely a shock factor to you, especially as a woman, when these things that we know are gifts, that we know are special, are kind of like everything's kind of turned around. It was definitely a really huge shift for me, and it made me realize how important it is to take care of ourselves, especially internally. Thank God I can sing now, and I feel better, but not everybody has that privilege. So I think since this is called like the unspoken, the unvoiced project, I think it's kind of crazy how sometimes you might have that, your voice taken away. And then it's kind of like, well, God, how can you kind of switch? Like, is this the end? What other ways can I create? It definitely made me realize how God has blessed me in other ways. And I was able to kind of realize my different gifts between not only singing, but, you know, writing and creating with my hands, creating with my feet, creating with whatever was in front of me, and having faith. I think that's a huge thing too. But yeah, vocal trauma.
And that's, for me, when I said that I was silenced, I did experience that. I did have moments, you know, it's funny because I didn't realize it was a thing until I heard Maya Angelou speak about it. I had a season of literally being mute. I think it lasted about 3 months where I couldn't will myself to talk. My family was deeply concerned. I still had to, it was the weirdest experience, but one of the most beautiful, because I still had to show up in a classroom, a Brooklyn public school classroom. I still had to show up and teach, and I was doing a lot of pointing and so forth. And it was a moment when the students were most listening, but yet the adults at times were a little bit more insensitive in that moment. But I was able to find out the other more subtle things that I was able to do in a moment of being silent, until I finally, you know, started going through the process. And I'm still going through that process of unsilencing. Before we move on, because I'm also trying to be mindful of time, any one of the groaner sisters here want to talk about kinds of trauma?
Well, when you presented the project to me, and I shared this a little bit yesterday, is that, you know, I wasn't sure I fit, because when we speak of trauma, it's always this very physical thing that folks want to hear a physical story. And my opening was important because it set the tone of my intention tonight, is that, you know, the one time I felt my voice wasn't heard was when I came to this country. You know, I came from a community that allowed me to speak. I, you know, lost my mom at a very young age, but yet I was bombarded with love and given an opportunity to speak in my voice. And then coming to this country, and everything you're taught about, you are wonderful, you are beautiful, you come from pride, you come from intelligence, you come from resiliency, was challenged when I came here for college. And it was extremely traumatic to come at that age and have everything that you are taught to be and how you rise up being challenged. You know, I was in, it was traumatic at times for me to be in predominant Black spaces. And just because I would say, you know, ¿Cómo estás? Or some, you know, something with my Spanish speaking accent, people would be like, oh, you're not Black. I'd be like, wait, what happened?
Right.
You know, and going into Latino spaces and being told that I'm not Latina, they can't even fit the concept of a Black person being from Latin America in most of the spaces I was entering. So it was extremely traumatic. I was constantly, and I'm still constantly having to explain what it is to be a Black woman from a Spanish-speaking country that's still very rooted in its Blackness, but I just happen to speak another oppressor's language.
Damn. Yeah, I feel you. Thank you. I'm going to move on and ask Jasmine Lola to offer up a poem.
Oh, I would love to.
Thank you.
So this poem I kind of wrote a little recently. I haven't named it, but I'm gonna call it Fly. Okay. I always wondered what my life would be like if I was to be a bird. They seem to have so much freedom, so much determination, a willingness to adapt to new situations, go-getters, not afraid of change. And most importantly, if they wanted to leave home, they didn't ask their mamas or daddies first. They just prepared. They failed many times and tried again until they got it down packed, until their wings could capture the right amount of air to balance themselves. Every time I looked up towards the sky, I felt connected. I would smile at its greatness, amazed in the makeup of every single cloud and its placement in this space. The longer I gazed, the deeper I was, the more I believed I could reside there. The more I believed I could visit anywhere at any time with no risk of failing. But I realized that no matter how much I longed to be free, that I could never be prepared enough to take that next step because it requires leaving all of what you've ever known and being spontaneous, curious. Yeah, I am those things, but I'm afraid of what I will discover.
Thank you. On that note, let's talk about courage. How do we define courage? How do we define courage as women? How do we define courage as artists? How do we define courage for all the ways that we show up? Who hasn't spoken yet? Please.
I haven't, I'll step in.
Hey.
To me, courage is kind of the process of both finding your voice and using your voice, either to make space for yourself or to make space for others who deserve to take up space in the world. And that can be a really scary thing to do, just to advocate for self. And then also, you know, just to, I'm sorry, someone might need to mute it. I'm not sure who it is.
Got it.
Okay. But yeah, so for me, it's quite literal. I started taking voice lessons, we're in 2020, so last year. After, you know, the last time I sang was in middle school, so that's how many years ago. And after that, I didn't think I could sing. And so last year I started taking voice lessons, and I was still, you know, like in that curious phase, like, well, what does my voice sound like? What is the shape of it? But for me, the courage is now, like, I have to sort of face this fear of, I'm actually afraid to take up space with my voice. Like, I have an idea of its size, like in terms of volume and in terms of range, but I've been afraid to take up space with it. So for me, courage is for me, it's in this literal sense, but I think also in in a metaphorical sense, courage is about using your voice to take up space and to make yourself heard and to speak for others who can't speak.
Yeah. Danielle.
You're gonna call on me. I agree with everything that Linda just said, and I was nodding in agreement because I had that experience very recently. I have been battling a sexual assault case, and what I found in the whole 8-month process was that the people who were the powers that be were counting on my silence so that they could continue with business as usual. And as long as I remained silent, then it gave them this unspoken permission to continue as usual. And so I called a meeting with the heads of the company and not only told my account of what happened to me, but also put their decision-making against their own value statement and left them sitting with that. And eventually what I believe was the right resolution for not only me, but the rest of the community, and everybody not being put in harm's way because of having to interact with this other company and individual. They reached that decision, but it took a lot of courage to insert myself in the conversation. So it's this very personal thing about me, and everybody's talking around me and making decisions about me and other women and the rest of my community. And nobody's asking me what I think about it. Nobody's involving me in my own resolution. And so I was, sometimes with courage is not a perfect situation. Like, it's not like you see an opportunity or you're met with an opportunity and you decide whether or not you're going to take the step. Sometimes courage is making your own opportunity. Even though I had like a lot of conflicting emotions, why didn't anybody come to me and speak to me about this thing? Why do I have to why do I have to fight so hard for people to do the right thing? They know what the right thing is. Everybody knows what the right thing is in the situation, you know. So, but to have the courage to say, you know, it doesn't matter what it should have been or what steps should have been followed, I'm going to be unsilenced anyway. And I think that there is so much, the unsilencing of the voice. I feel like the root of the courage is faith, because when you believe that your voice has power, when you believe that you are called to do a thing, whether it's in one moment or your purpose of being an artist or what have you, whatever that expression is, when you believe in its power and you believe that it has been given to you, like Jasmine was saying earlier, it is your gift, it is your talent, it has been gifted to you. When you actually believe in it, then you can have courage. Not saying you will never be met with fear, but I feel like when you don't have the faith behind it, it makes it so much exponentially harder to do the things that you want to do, that you feel called to do, and to say.
You know what, as you were talking about it, I'm thinking of the fact that you are an assistant chair of a department and probably the largest music learning house in the world. And so the courage that is even necessary in those moments when you have to speak truth to power also deals with like my job. Like there's the courage of speaking up, where if I say something, not saying that this is what you walk in, but for some of us, sometimes we stay silent because there is that power dynamic that's happening. Right. And so it's you know, just for fear of like being able to pay the rent, sometimes we stay silent in moments like that. Anyone else can relate to that?
Thank you. I don't know if, you know, it didn't, those moments came about so often at a time that it was sort of like I left everything I was doing. I, you know, was working in the, you know, top institution and had the safe job, and I was still being faced with, you know, this level of exclusion that, you know, was just overwhelming at times. So it just was like, you know what, I need to create my own. I need to go, you know, deeper into that search. So I left it and started my own. You know, I founded Encuentro Diáspora Afro in 2004, you know, and it was just, it started as an idea that I was going around, I was getting hired as a bilingual social worker in predominantly Latina spaces, and I was leaving as the Black woman.
And sometimes the angry Black woman.
Yes. And no acknowledgement from the space of what was being done that led to the leaving. You know, and I kept seeing it, and I kept standing before Latinos of all shades who would be like, no, yo no soy negro, yo soy dominicano, yo no soy negro, yo soy puertorriqueño. I'm like, what is up with this? Like, how can you, the internal denial of Blackness within the Latino community was palpitating. It was like standing before people would be like, I'm not Black. I'm like, what just happened? You know, pigmentation and otherwise, people would still be saying I'm not Black. So for me, it became the courage to tell my story, the courage to tell my ancestors' story, and the courage to tell my family's story. Yeah. That I wasn't gonna let anybody take away from me. And that meant a level of sacrifice that no one prepared me for.
Right.
I lost jobs because of that. I lost friendships and continue to lose friendships because of that position. I have lost relationships, friends, and I was not getting invited. It's, you know, and Anna and I have had this conversation. It was a good chunk of time where the Latino community was not inviting me. I was not getting my books, my work was getting absolutely ignored because I was a reminder of a conversation that people did not want to have.
Yeah.
But I still had to enter spaces. So it took a lot of courage to continue to end and to see that 2020, I have gotten invited to most of the spaces that I thought could not handle me before. Says a lot.
Yeah.
Can I just add on here for a moment too? Like, I agree with everything that was just said. And I think ultimately for me, it boils down to saying courage is about showing up for yourself, right? Whether you're in a space that you feel that you're made to feel that you don't belong in, or in a space where you feel like you have to amplify your voice just to be heard. A lot of it is being able to show up for yourself. But I think also in many ways, it's also important to understand that showing up for yourself means different things for different people. So I think very many times people define courage as speaking out against something or speaking up for this or speaking up for that. And I think that that's absolutely important, but sometimes it has to happen on your own time. And for those of us who've been through sexual trauma, through abuse, through anything, sometimes you're expected to say this happened. And if you don't say that it happened, you're made to look at somebody as sort of like you weren't able to hold your own, you weren't able to speak up for yourself. And I just think it's also important in a situation like this to really say and really voice the fact that it has to happen on your own time. And there is courage just in being able to get up every day and show up for yourself in that space as well.
Say that.
That's real.
Say that. I want to thank you, everybody, so far. I want to get into some of Linda's visual artwork, and I want to give a shout out to Amy McDonald and Fran. Amy and Linda helped to create the artwork, not helped to, they created in different phases the logo that's behind me. Linda listened to me and did her magic, and then Amy took it to the point of print and made this banner and the cover design of the album. So thank you, Amy. Thank you, Fran, because you know why. Linda, let's look at your artwork.
All right, let's do this.
Hey. I'm trying to put it to the share screen right now. Here we go. So we were talking about process, or at least Anna was talking about process. Does everyone see this?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
So this is, to me, this looks like process.
Yes.
Talk about it.
Well, so I'm also going to start, I don't know if people can see, like I'm pointing at the painting over my left shoulder.
Your finger looks like it's actually touching it is funny.
But that's the finished artwork is behind me. And this one took months. Wow, it took months to do.
I'm gonna pull it down for a second. Keep talking, please.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I'll talk a little bit about my influences, because I think that also helps to explain the process, which is that I have been in love with illuminated manuscripts from like a teenager. And so for the last, I think like 5 years or so, I got into working with metal leaf, because I mean, gold leaf is super expensive and very finicky, but the idea of illuminating, like of gilding things, is just really cool. I just really like shiny things. But so for the one with the paintbrush, I was applying leaf to the edge, and that was starting to finish. But there are a few different aesthetics at play. So like there's Egyptian. So starting at the bottom left-hand corner, that's like Egyptian. And then the next string is like from the Book of Kells, which is an Irish manuscript. And then at the very end, where the brush is, where I'm applying to the edge, that's from like, I think, Indian architecture. Like from like their medieval, so like the Red Fort, I think is if you look up the Red Fort, like they have sort of similar motifs. So that's what I can sort of speak to the process of that. It just it takes months. And then the other one that I think you put up, oh yeah. So here's the one that's like all leaf. I was really into the geometry of sunflower seeds, I believe. And that's how this one came about. And I have a few variants on this particular theme. But yeah, sunflower seeds are the one is what inspired this particular design.
I'm gonna show another one.
I just really like symmetry. So yeah, so a bit about my background in terms of, so it's like this art, but my dad's a scientist and I did science for a long time. Oh yeah, so switching gears. A project I did and I got a friend of mine to nag me to finish it is something called lettering around. So these are letters in circular format. So this is the letter Q and each layer is the letter Q in a different style. And
I'm gonna show another one. Keep talking.
So it helps to, like, speaking of accountability, it helps to have people who like, so are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done? Because I never would have finished it. I might have gotten to like maybe J and then called it a day. But I did get to Z. So, and I do have photos and prints of each of those letters.
Are they for sale?
They are upon request. Yeah, just like, you know, if people can let me know which letter they like, I can get a print. So this one I think is the last one. This looks like Z.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's Z. So.
And I'm gonna show one more because I'm indulgent like that.
Sure.
And this.
Oh yeah. Also kind of like the sunflower seed, but it's much smaller. So I was curious to see, well, what happens if I, rather than making it sort of bigger as it goes out, what is it like if I keep each the same size? And I sort of like the spiral that came out of it. And there are two different colors in it. So it's alternating spirals, like one's like this, then other one's like this. And you can sort of follow the different colors. Like you can pick a line and follow it.
Yeah.
But also just looking at it, I've definitely had people tell me that they look at it and it helps them, like either during their meditation, it helps center them, it helps calm them, which is nice. You don't always get to control the impact of like how your art, whatever it may be, how it hits your audience, like at which angle it hits their heart. But when it does, like that's really cool. So yeah, that was really cool to hear that people were like, I look at this and it makes me calm. So
where can we find your work?
I have a website that will go up at the end of this month, inshallah. I have a friend who's working on it, and it's basically my first name, last name.com, so lindaalila.com. And I hope to have that launched by the end of this month.
Okay. And in the meantime, can we put your IG out there?
Yeah, circles and letters. It's a little sparse right now, and it's funny because most of the stuff that's actually there is like, this is this knitting project I was working on because I picked up knitting 3 years ago for kicks, and that's sometimes where my creative energies are now directed, is just like knitting things. I have this at my desk. It's a little messy, but so dragon scale, speaking of courage, like this is going to be a scarf.
Nice.
And it's just like wearing dragon scales. It's like, okay, I can take on the world.
Very Game of Thrones.
Yes.
When you were talking about the different influences in that first piece that we showed with Process, it made me think of the multicultural aspect, but then it also brought me to the thought of what we were saying yesterday about the representation of the diaspora that's here.
So I want to say something really quickly about this. So it's not quite apparent. So the U behind you in UnSilenced.
Yes.
My original design on that has sort of led into this idea that I hope I have time to pursue. But like, so the idea of like illuminated manuscripts, right? You find them in Iran, you find them in India. Most of the time we think of illuminated manuscripts as being Western European. But I have been toying with the idea of doing like illuminated manuscripts, like of capital letters, but with more of like an African, so like an African iconography, if you will, for creating illuminated manuscripts. Ethiopia also has quite a few, I think, of their own. But by and large, it's just sort of this, like I wanted to create an aesthetic that was really reflected the diaspora. like the ones from Europe are great, but it's nice to sort of create sort of like our an illuminated manuscript that kind of reflects us. So that's an idea I'm toying with, and I hope to get to do it this year. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Thank you. Diaspora. So the conversation came up yesterday when we were talking about mothering. We were talking about our relationships with our mothers. For those of us who may not have our mothers present, how we were mothered, and then some of us are actually physically mothers, and then some of us are spiritually and emotionally mothers. Again, Naledi, like you said before, it's a broad thought, but someone jump in there. I hear Tammy. Is that Tammy?
Yes, it is me. Oh, do I even have a?
Yeah, well, you're gonna have to talk now.
Hi.
Hi, my love.
My name is Hi, Yvette. Oh my God. Okay, I'm so happy. I'm so excited right now.
As you sit here with your child.
I'm here with my daughter, who's about to rip the paper to the poem that I have. But my name is Tamanai. I'm known as Tammy, but Tamanai is my government. I am a mom. I am a teacher. I preschool teacher. I'm an author. I play the ukulele, and I think I said, and I'm a vocalist. And yeah, I'm an unsilenced woman.
Did you say author?
Author. I said author.
Sorry. Okay.
I'm an unsilenced voice. I'm a mom. There's this illustration, or there's this like image of like a mom, a grandmother, and then a daughter. So three generations of women, and it's showing how when when one woman in that generation, that image of three women from three different generations, when one of them heals themselves, then all of them end up healing in some way, shape, or form. And for me, that image is my daughter, me, and my mom, and my grandmother. So there's 4 generations. So if I really, when I really work through healing my voice, then I'm also sharing that healing and transmuting that healing to my daughter, to my mother, to my grandmother. So that's in terms of mothering and being experiencing motherhood from my own parents or my own mom and my grandmother, and then in terms of me mothering, me working on healing my voice or healing myself is all about healing the women around me.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of motherhood that some of us have experienced pain from. Our moms not healing their own trauma.
Right.
Honey.
Did you say stay there? We talked about this yesterday. I wanna touch back in with Joanne, Naledi, and Yvette, kind of based on what we were riffing on yesterday's thoughts. Just even coming off of what Tamanai just said.
Yeah, what she just said was amazing. And I know definitely things that have been coming to me specifically as being a voice that's not silenced is also speaking for my grandmother, who was who stayed quiet in different circumstances for other people to be able to move forward. So, and even for, my grandmother's mother and all of these other women that were there before that maybe didn't have the opportunity to speak. So even you putting this project together, kind of, like when you said the word, the unsilenced voice, it kind of brought to me like, I'm in this space right now, I'm at this time right now, why should I be silent? So, just what she's saying, and every time we speak, we are we're speaking for everyone else as well. We're speaking for those people who feel like they can't or they can't yet. The same way I know for myself with my own personal, my own journey, there were times where I remained silent because I was still reflecting and kind of figuring out what was going on. So yeah, that really resonated with me, what you just said. Come on, Irene, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Naledi, and I'm purposefully asking, thank you, Joanne. Naledi, and then I want Yvette to speak because I think that will take us into another conversation. But Naledi, talk about what you were saying yesterday about non-Western eyes and your experience.
Yeah, I think generally, when it comes to the concept of mothering, what I kind of brought up was how in my community, and I would imagine in most Black communities, the understanding of mother is not necessarily that Western nuclear family type of, you know, she gave birth to me, therefore she's my mother. Like in my language and in a lot of South African languages, we refer to any lady who is around our mother's age that is in our community as mother. When we speak about our aunts, we don't say like, this is my aunt and my cousin twice removed, etc. We'll say like, it's my mam kulu, which means older mom, mam ngani, which is smaller mom. And with your cousins, you'll be like, that's my brother, that's my sister. So sometimes when I speak in English, at times it can get confusing to people because I'll be like, oh no, my brother said this, or like my mom said this one thing. And they're like, wait, I thought you didn't have a brother, or you didn't have this, or you didn't have that. But I think like in general, even in the way the community works, for me, I was raised by a single mom who's actually, I think she's on the call, but her picture's just frozen.
Oh yes, hi mom. Who's mom?
I don't know if she's actually on the call.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was raised by a single mom. But I don't ever feel like I lacked in anything in my upbringing because my family is like a very matriarchal family, mostly women, strong, independent, etc., etc. And I always felt like in anything that I would think is lacking from my mom or lacking because of my father not being there, I would get it from my community. All those people around me who I referred to as my moms, it wasn't just the name, it was also in the way that they treated me, in the way that they raised me. They were literally like, I get so emotional sometimes just thinking about how these people would be carrying my mother, like they'd all like be holding hands like this, but then at the same time like carrying me and raising me into the person that I am. So I think just generally like the whole concept of mom and mother being disconnected because of way of birth, for me it's kind of like, yeah, it's a bit strange when I enter like a white space or a more westernized space and people think of it in that way, because I'm like, how would you not regard this person that has like, you know, fulfilled all of these characteristics that a mother would fulfill? How would you not regard them as somebody who holds a similar space in your heart? Not the same space, but like, you know, yeah.
Yvette, and
Well,
Yvette,
you know,
sorry, hold on for a second. Can I just, I don't think we've acknowledged our friends that are present but silent. So thank you to everybody that we see you, we feel you. Hi, Bonnie. Hi. There's a Xavier Steinitz. I'm not sure who that is. There's a Tracy, Carolina. There's Mark. There's Linda Chase. There's Aid. There's Ann. There's Heather. There's Matthew. There's Authentically Barbara. I'm not sure who that is. There's Tyler. There's Robin. There's Sammy. Thank you guys for being present and with us. So yeah. And I already shouted out Amy and Fran. And there's a person here that says diagnostic iPad and Maverick, mwah, 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 and CJ, mwah, mwah, mwah. Yvette.
This is where, you know, yesterday when we spoke, that's why I thought this is the diaspora. Because Naledi's experience is very much the same as mine. And we grew up calling everyone Tia. And it wasn't until you grew up that you were like, oh, that's not, you know, a real Tia. That's just how we called those in our community. This question is a question that I love to answer. I am a motherless child. My mom passed away when I was very young, but I was bombarded with a level of love that, although that gap was missing, I was not missing women who loved me as their own, a community who loved me as their own. But most importantly, I was raised by a man who kept his promise and raised me to be the woman that I am. My father picked up from the gems that my mother left my brother, my sister, and I with, and did an amazing job. We were a priority to him. We were and still are the center to him. And he was very intentional with the women that were around us. My Aunt Jean, Uncle Dilde, you know, the women in the community, the women in Rainbow City, they all played a role who I sit here as. And that came from how the community took us on, but how my father was intentionally present to make sure that his daughter was going to be the woman that he wanted and she wanted her to be. And he did everything he could for that to happen. So I sit here as a motherless daughter with the whisper and the ears of a man who shaped me.
So from there, I want to launch into the question that you posed, or that you reminded us to think about. Who are the people in our community? Who are the women? Who are the men? And from there, let's talk about relationships. But let's start with, who are the women that helped to raise us and to get us here? And then who are the men that helped shape us? Because, you know, as I mentioned before, I'm concerned that when people see women gathering, they think we're in here crying and talking about men and how they ain't shit. But that's not what we're doing at all. Let's talk about that, y'all. Don't all speak at once.
Well, I think that, you know, for me, it's exactly what Naledi said is, you know, was my aunt, especially the one who was my godmother. Like, I was her baby. You couldn't tell her anything different until I was, you know, until I was grown and she passed away. Like, I was her baby. But all of my aunts, all of my uncles, all of them were very present in all of the lives of the nieces, the nephews. It was very communal on both sides of my family. You know, my parents had a lot of help, and my grandparents on my mom's side played a really big part. They actually raised me for the first 2 to 2.5 years of my life, when my mom had to go, when her maternity leave was over and she had to go back to work. So I lived with them. I don't remember that part, but it was one of the reasons why our relationship was so close, because I became their baby, you know?
Yeah.
But I think that sense of, you know, when you're in the presence of any adult that's a part of your community, that you are their child and that you're responsible for them as if they were your own. Like, there was never a point where I would be with my aunt or my uncle where they'd be like, well, that's not my kid, so you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You know, it was always this sense of, you know, I'm caring for you exactly as I'm caring for the children that belong to me, you know, and even those that did not have kids at that point in time, I'm caring for you like you are my child. They regarded us all as precious.
Yeah.
And I think that sense of community with the play cousins, it was play cousins, play aunties, you know, like people that you grow up, and it's not until you're like in your late 20s or early 30s that you realize that they're not related to you at all.
Right. That's what Naledi was talking about. Like, all these people, just like, how many cousins do you have?
Everybody's my cousin.
All of them. I want to, Danielle, were you saying something else? I want to bring Jasmine in, and I would like Anna to go next with her dance piece. But Danielle, please continue.
No, I'm good. I just,
Okay.
Community. Everybody was a part of my upbringing.
Yeah.
Jasmine.
I think that's so beautiful to hear from everybody. I think my experience was a little different. I have a very close immediate family. So I think for the majority of my life I have been in my room, and I've been with my mom and my dad and my younger brother, my older brother, for a certain amount of time before he moved out and did his own thing, created his own world. But yeah, the women in my life, my mom has been an amazing woman in my life, especially because there's a lot of rough spots, a lot of ups and downs in my family, a lot of rifts and separations. So I don't really get to see a lot of my cousins on my mom's side, and I really don't get to see a lot of my cousins and uncles and aunts on my dad's side. But there are two different heritages that I tap into and that I'm figuring out and I'm learning because of that separation that kind of hindered me growing up. Sorry, I'm getting emotional about it. But but I think as I grew, you know, it was really hard for me to see the power and amazement of my grandmother and my mother, just because I was bullied for a really long time when I was younger, and a lot of that was dismissed. So I really felt alone for a good amount of time. And at the moment, it was more like music was kind of like my healer and was like my provider. For a lot of times, I would go in my room, and with all the things that was said to me, like you're a roach, you're dark, you're disgusting, you're this, you're that, and I would just go in my room and then just kind of write it all down. And that was kind of my my provider. My mother is such a hard worker, and she has provided so much for me and my brother. But I think emotionally, there is like that disconnect. So I really didn't really realize how amazing the women are in my life until I kind of got older and I was in high school, like going to college, and I was realizing, wait, my mom would work 3 jobs just to support me and my brother. My mom would do a lot of things. My dad worked out of town, so I really didn't get to see him a lot. But, you know, there's times where I would live with my grandmother for 6 months and times where I would live with my mom and my younger brother. But I realized all this emotional disconnect there was a lot going on with me, but there was so much on the outside that my mom was doing for me, which was beautiful. And then, you know, we got to cry and talk it out and hug it out later. But yeah, I would definitely say that my mother and my grandmother are the superheroes of my life. And when I got to college, I found so many more moms, and I found so many more cousins, and found so many more sisters. But it definitely was very rough for me. I didn't really have that huge family that I really longed for. But I'm so grateful for my small community of moms that I have. It's definitely have blessed me, and I wouldn't be here today without them. So.
I think one of the things, let me just for a second. Anna, are you there? Okay.
Yes, she is.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. After I make this point, I want you to do your thing. I think, and then after Anna does her beautiful thing, I would like us to actually talk about relationships, and actually kind of like in the line of what Jasmine was saying, talk about the art that we have created as a healing balm in the midst of our pain. So I also want to talk about that. But Jasmine, to kind of talk about what you were saying with our mothers, and that's, I think there's a level or place that we get to when we look back on our mothers. And I think, Naledi, you said this yesterday too, like you know, when we're younger, we have this fight kind of relationship with our mother, and then we grow older and we experience life, and then we're like, oh, word, that's what my mother was dealing with. And then there's this place of humility that we come to, and a place of forgiveness when we understand that some of what we experienced that may have been traumatizing to us and for us when we were younger, our mothers were in the midst of trauma, and they were doing the best that they could. So just, I want to give a shout out to our mothers, and to just, you know, all the adults that helped to raise us, that were human beings who were also growing up at the same time. I remember Danielle, you said that, Yvette, you said that your dad would say to you consistently that he was growing up with you guys in the absence of your mother. But then you also said something about how your father showed up. And this is what I want to talk about when we talk about relationships, because I also want to say to you, thank you publicly for allowing me to see a different image of the Afro-Panamanian man. And you know what I'm talking about. That's another conversation for another day. So we'll come back into relationships, and we'll talk about the art that we create as a means of healing. And Anna.
Long seem the days, colder the night, where the moon, where is the light? Dark moon, hard times, dancing and high, dancing shadows in the mind. Look again over the side. A light from yonder, a ray of hope beyond the eyes. Live is disappear. A new day awaits, just the word. Just so cold. Dreams in cocoons. Dark sings to moon, a rebirth is soon. I know the hour seems back. Trust good outlast. Think of yesterday from home. Gratitude is now before.
Yay! That's awesome, Bonnie. Thank you. Bete! Thank you so much. I want to say that one of the, I did a whole bunch of like Afro-Caribbean dancing when I was in New York. So one of the things when I first realized that I actually live in Boston was to check in to see where I could pick up that kind of energy. And the whole time when I would type, this is long before I knew you, was Masacote, Masacote, Masacote. And then here we are today where I actually get to share this moment with you and have talked with you, and you've encouraged me through and taught me through. So thank you so much for that. I want you to talk about it a little bit. Yes. The song that, thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Mark. The song that Anna was just dancing to is from my EP that I just released on Friday. I released it early because Bandcamp an opportunity for us to receive our full sales without their percentage out. But it is available on Bandcamp. So Anna, thank you for that. You want to talk about it for a second?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for considering me for this project.
Who else?
I want to say this is my first, this is the first type of performance we're doing on video. And I think that if anything, one blessing is that we're learning to do art in a new way. Like, this is pretty amazing to think that you could have people around the world watching this and experiencing this and in a very new way. So I think for me, I'm hoping that I did justice in a way that speaks to what you look for in this project, and ultimately I hope it speaks to you in a way of really just releasing and letting go. That's what I was trying to say from it.
Received. Received. I also want to talk about that point too, and remind me, everyone, if I don't remember to get to it, is to talk about art in these times, specifically in these times. Let's talk about relationships. And we laughed yesterday when we talked about, you know, when you show up strong, sometimes it doesn't always, I'm trying to choose my words.
No,
be honest.
You know, when we show up strong, sometimes folks can't handle it. So what's been happening for y'all in relationships and your strengthness?
I'd like to kind of touch back on the conversation that I started yesterday about men and my relationship with men and how it's impacting the relations that I have with men now. I think kind of, so like I was saying, I was raised by my mother, a single mother. I was with, like, my father stayed in the house until I was around 9 or 10 years old. And then I had an on and off relationship with him from then on. So I feel personally, I have felt like a lot of disappointment from men in general, because I think firstly, because my first interaction with like the first man of my life was kind of disappointing for me growing up. So that was the image that I ended up attaching to men. And especially because I come from a family where the women on my mother's side were all like divorcees. So everybody just like is not a fan of men and is like, you know, men are disappointing, they're this, they're that, they're that. And I think in the past few years, I've started doing a lot of introspection in terms of how this affects my interactions with men. We're living like obviously in an age of like men are trash, men are this is happening, that is happening. And a lot of that obviously can cloud a lot of the space that I give myself to introspect, I guess. So I've been trying to kind of repair my relationship with myself and my relationship with my past and the things that have been happening in my past, so that going forward, I don't necessarily block myself from things that may be good for me, or like force myself to see things that might not necessarily be true of every single man that exists.
Right. All of them, just all of them.
Yeah. I'm not saying like I feel like there is some truth to some of this men are trash conversation, but
wait, can I take a moment from the men that I know here? Shout out to Mark Zaleski, who I know is a good man.
Yes.
Shout out to Mark, Matt, Esther Brooke, who's here, Tyler Wagner, who's here, and everyone who has a partner that's present. I see you, Mark.
We love you guys. But I think it's an important thing for, especially in a lot of Black community, in a lot of Black families where there's a similar narrative of like fatherless households, etc., where we've found that our first relationship with men has been tainted by the relationships we've had with our fathers.
Yeah.
I think it's important, especially for young women, to start having conversations about how we are healing from that and how we can keep our hearts open. Like, I know, like in the Bible, it's like, you know, guard your hearts, etc., and I know that's an important thing. But also I feel sometimes for myself, I began this journey because I saw myself just, you know, I was like 19 when I began this journey, and I already saw myself just like any man would breathe in my direction and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, did you have to do that? So I think it's a bit of a dangerous, it's a bit of a dangerous way of living, because you block yourself from really receiving interactions that might be positive for yourself and positive for your life, and just having negative energies towards people and from people is not a good way to live. So yeah, I think that's a conversation that a lot of young people could be having more and more.
And like we talked about this yesterday, I laugh about it. I'm about a year out of feeling like all men. But I knew that it had everything to do with my first. I'm trying to be careful because my dad recently passed. An amazing man in the community, but he's a human being. And so just watching his interactions with my mom definitely gave me a certain perspective on how relationships are had by some. That being said, Queen D, I want you to talk, and Yvette, I want you to talk about some of the images that you've seen. And we had this conversation about, being African-American and being Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latina. And Daniel, you checked me yesterday. Let's talk about this. Like the men in the first man in your life, what did you see? Thank you, Naledi. The man in your life, what did you see?
Well, my dad was, my mom was like this big career woman. So I spent most of my time in my formative years with my dad, so like my dad was there when I first got my period, and he told my mom, and she came in the next day,
Right.
But because of the dynamics with my mom and my dad, the fact, what I was saying yesterday was that my household kind of broke the gender norms. Like my parents had now that I'm older, my mom has discussed with me, like the discussions that her and my dad had about, who's caring for me, who's picking me up, who's doing the laundry, who's cooking, and all of that stuff. That was a conversation that they had. But when I was growing up, I just thought that these were the things that grown people did to maintain themselves and maintain the people that they care about. There was nothing that seemed like woman's work that my dad was doing, and nothing that seemed like men's work that my mom was doing. Right. And it wasn't until I went to college and started interacting as a single woman with young men that I learned that, my dad being the primary home caregiver was more of a woman's role, and my mom working the extra long hours and being the higher paid breadwinner was a man's role. That men didn't want to do dishes, they didn't want to be with the baby all day, they didn't want to cook and all. I learned how to cook from my dad and my grandmother, like, what I'm saying? Like it's it was so different. There was no such thing as gender norms. And the one thing that I'm really blessed to see is that my dad never held it against my mother that she had such a vibrant career.
Right.
Right. At least from what I witnessed, it never looked like he made her feel bad for that. You know what I'm saying? That he let her just thrive and grow and what have you. And so now that I'm older and I have this wonderful career at my alma mater, and I'm a boss chick and all that stuff. And I'm finding that my relationships with men are not like what the balance between my mom and dad, that most men are competitive with me. That if and I'm not trying to compete with anybody, and I honestly don't care what your job is with somebody I'm dating, as long as you feel fulfilled and you're happy with your job and your station and you're focused on whatever you feel like your purpose is. You could be the mailman. If you happy, I'm happy. For me, it's not about status, because that wasn't my experience growing up. My mom wasn't like, well, you don't have this title that I have, so therefore, you're not as good as me. That was never a factor. And so that's not how I think of men. I know that sometimes women get a bad rap because we're called gold diggers, and if we're not on our level, on the same job track or career track, that you know, we don't want anything to do with you. And that's just has never been that wasn't what I saw growing up. And so that hasn't been my experience. But the insecurity of manhood, and I don't know where that comes from. Maybe it's, you know, just this westernized social thing of the man has to be the sole or the primary or the highest earning breadwinner, that they're always competing with me. And so in my longer relationships and more serious relationships, those men have tried to cut me in some way, shape, or form. So if they couldn't make me feel bad about my artistry or about where my career was going, they would make me feel bad about my body or the way that I looked, or the texture of my hair, or in other ways that would undermine my sense of womanhood and femininity and identity, and that, you know, would kind of stick with you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Understand.
So, yeah.
I have a similar experience, but Yvette does not. Yvette has something else. And I also want to say that Anna wants to come in with her perspective on relationships as a queer woman. So Yvette, you're not coming from the place that Danielle and I, or even Naledi is, but give us something else.
Yeah, it's very interesting to be on this very different perspective journey in this conversation. You know, I was raised by a man at a very crucial age. So I love my father as my father, but I admire my father as a man.
Right.
One of the things that he taught us and showed us and was open about was that he was learning, and he wasn't perfect, and he was complex, and he would mess up, and he owned his mess ups, and he got it right the next time.
Part. Wait, can we say right there? It's the owning.
Oh no, my father would own the mess ups, and so I came from an environment of a man who already told me men are perfect and they don't always get it right. And so, you know, and then I grew up around, I have a crush on my uncles. I had crushes on my uncles, you know, like I had stories with each of my uncles and how I would spend time with each of them individually, also knowing their complexity. And also I'm Panamanian of Caribbean descent, Jamaica and Barbados. So all that was mixed into this, but they were authentic in their best way. And that meant showing the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, like I have crushes on the men I grew up with. Like my male friend, I absolutely adore, because we grew up in this environment where, you know, we saw each other's stuff. And the fact that, you know, we can still get together 30, 40 years after and still just meet where we are at, and meet at that love that we had from the beginning. So that to say that, shoot, I learned the game from a man. So it's like, come on now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Daddy didn't hide all, you know, all the stuff that comes with it. So I've had good relationships, but I also come from a place, you know, Alice Walker has this worksheet at the back of her book now the book just went blank on me, but you know, the only way forward is with a broken heart. And she says that we learn from each of our relationships. And I learn from each of my relationships because I get better for the next one.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't see the good one as the best one or the bad one as the worst one. I see it as I got something out of it, and it has allowed me to not be jaded, still believe and be hopeful, and still love. And what another layer of this awareness in the trauma and the denial of identity that I have taken on, and they have given me the purpose that they have given me, has allowed me to also land in this place that I love Black men.
Yeah.
I love Black men. I love all that they come with, and I am willing to work with it and for it for as long as I can. And that's not to say that sometimes be like, you really, you know what? That is not okay. But I'ma still love you in this broken place that you're in right now. And I'm hoping that you can recover, because we're not perfect.
Right.
We don't come right all the time. We don't come full all the time. So we cannot expect things from someone else that we don't even have, right? So it takes for the mutual work to happen. So I don't think it's what they need to do or what we need to do, is what we need to do. And specifically for Black love, Black relationships, is that we need to see each other and to understand. One of the things that I read in Hill Harper's book, The Conversation, that will never leave me, is that when you date a Black man, you are dating 400 years of a story that weighs very heavily on them.
Yeah.
And that's not to excuse the behavior, but it's to understand the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joanne, I want to come to you when we talk about our art as part of our healing. But Anna, dime. Thank you, Yvette.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Yvette. And it's such truth and light to that. For me, I had a very, I have a very similar experience in terms of love towards the men in my life who've been there. Many of my strongest supporters have been men. I come from a background in a home where my mother was the main person who paid the bills, who made ends meet and made sure that we stayed afloat. And so I never really saw a partnership in my parents. And on top of that, I am a queer woman, I'm a bi woman, and I had a very hard time coming out when I was younger. Eventually, I did marry, and I was married for 10 years to a man who actually, in all honesty, was a person who taught me to be okay with who I was, and to say that I was okay being queer, I was okay being a bi woman. And that was a really, to me, to this day, one of the biggest things that I took away from the relationship. And he's still my best friend to this day, and we still care about each other and support ourselves, even though we're not married. Since then, the funny thing is that when we began, we started from the bottom and we grew in our relationship as both business people and as partners. And so on the business field, I became an international dancer that, you know, I have a name around or in the circle of the salsa industry. That has proved harder since then being in relationships, because now there's a feeling that when I am with a partner, that they see me as the person. And I've had these conversations, Yvette and I have had these conversations as well, that our partners often see us as the brand versus the person. And so you start losing a little bit of that humanity when you're placed sort of on that pedestal. And then it always feels like sort of a competition since then. And the dynamic is really interesting because amongst women, very often we get competitive amongst each other. So also sometimes dating women has felt a little, like a very unique experience for me, that I've had to learn to understand what that partnership means. And so there's the dynamic of how do you make sure that you're at an even playing field, that you can let go of the name while still retaining the power of your own identity. And that's something that to this day I think I'm still learning myself.
I think if we have enough time today, I want to talk about trust amongst women. Like that's a whole you know, within the concept of like necessity for women to actually talk, like the balance in that. But I think we've gone long without some kind of expression. Naledi. And then we're going to Joanne and healing art. Naledi, can you do what you do, please?
Hi. So I'm going to be using my vocal processor to do a song called Tongolam. Tongolam means my spirit or my soul, and basically the song, it was written by Thandiswa Mazwai, who's a South African vocalist. And it's basically a call to ancestral spirits, to higher power, higher being, it's kind of speaking, I feel like the song, especially in the past few months, has really sat closely to me because it kind of speaks of this tiredness, and it's like, could you please like kind of lift me from this tiredness, lift this weight off of me, off of my shoulders, off of my being. Can my spirit agree with what the spirit has called for it to be and not with what the world is causing it to become? So yeah, I'm gonna sing. Can you guys hear this?
Ndiceliyeza yeza lokhu kapa ndikhuphe inkathazo onanze inkathazo koko ndiceliyeza yeza lokhu hlamba ndisuse inkathazo ngoba nansi inkathazo zifika ebusuku zifika nasemini oh inkathazo Lambuma, lambuma, tongo lambuma, oh, lambuma, lambuma, tongo lambuma, oh, dikeliyeza, yeza loku hlamba, disuse inkathazo, ngoba nansi inkathazo, koko dikeliyeza. Yeza loku kapa, dikhuphe inkathazo, ngoba nansi inkathazo, zifike ebusuku, yeza nasemini, ndiziva ndiphambana, lambuma, lambuma, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, hey, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, dikeliyeza, yeza loku hlamba, disuse inkathazo, ngoba nansi inkathazo, koko dikeliyeza, yeza loku kapa, dikhuphe inkathazo, ngoba nansi inkathazo, hey yeah, Tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, lambuma, tongo lambuma, 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 lambuma. Lambuma, 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 tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, lambuma, tongo lambuma, 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 oh, tongo lambuma, lambuma. Lambuma, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, oh tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, tongo lambuma, oh tongo lambuma. Whoa.
Hey!
Come on!
You better sing.
Hey.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
That's all the way in.
But
That's
get
all
up
the
and
way in.
dancing.
Yes,
Love it, love it,
ma'am.
love it. Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Yes.
She's like, I'm gonna make this moment happen. I'm gonna give you an atmosphere.
I,
I'm gonna give you loops. I'm gonna give you my microphone. I'm gonna give you beauty. I'm here.
Thank you.
Nice.
Somebody wrote, who gave you the permission?
That was hilarious.
Joanne.
oh
Thank you,
my
Naledi.
boy.
Right?
That
So
was
keep it
so
talking.
healing. That was so amazing. Yeah.
That was
Yeah. So talking about healing, and is that what you were saying? Healing through trauma, and using
help.
art.
Yes.
Yeah, using art. So I am a body worker and a birth doula. So I do work with like physical health. And so I've been doing that for about 20 years, but always been interested in it even before that time. And one thing that just keeps coming for me is the importance of all of the other arts, spiritual, as well as expressive arts, and how they play a huge role in your healing.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel like there are multiple ways to this healing, through reflection, but also definitely, through creativity and creativity, and I feel like it's very individual. Like there's a road for you, and there's a path for you, and there's a certain way or a way that works for you. So even the body work I do for my clients that I've been seeing forever, it's not the same thing every time. You know what I mean? It's organic, and it's kind of and it's something you have to be able to listen to. So like in the realm of the unsilenced voice, it's being able to hear that unsilenced voice. And it may not just be your voice like speaking, but it may be that voice inside that's now unsilenced, and you can hear it and get to your healing.
Yeah.
And get to where you need to go. And it's amazing just being here and with all of these artists and seeing all of the gifts that you guys, are bringing, and the ways in which you are healing. It's just it's amazing.
I need you not to talk about us as if you're not a part of it. So let me brag on you for a second. Them healing hands, though. So officially, Joanne is my masseuse. I don't know what to tell y'all. I lay down. Sometimes I come to when she wakes me up. It's very hard for me to stay awake when she's done. I just know I walk away feeling better. You are friggin' amazing at what you do. And you really, when you work on my body, it really does feel like you're listening to me in the ways that I am not speaking, that my body is saying help to. So for me, I think you are expressing yourself thoroughly in that way. So thank you. I want to go through all of us. What art do you make now that you currently do that came out of maybe trauma or just came out of your healing process? Like I shared with you before, I make beaded earrings, but it started, I would make beaded waistbands and beaded neck pieces, and then just do larger pieces. That was part of my healing process, which then became an art form for me, which I was actually able to make some money on. What do you do? Everyone, I want you to ask. I'm going to start with Naledi. What's that art thing? Let's do this kind of quick. I don't want to rush you, but what's that art thing that you do that came about in your process of healing? Unmute, baby. Unsilence.
Sorry. It's kind of corny, but for me it was always songwriting, composing. I always refer to the story. My first memory of actually writing music, I was around 4 or 5 years old, and we'd gone grocery shopping with my mom, and she refused to buy me a ball. I just wanted a ball to play, and she refused to buy it because I had so many, blah blah blah. And I can very, very vividly remember getting home that day, finding a piece of paper, hiding behind one of the tables because I was like bawling, I was in tears, and writing a song about how unfair it was that my mom wouldn't get me a ball. Why don't I ever get what I want? And I don't even know how to explain, but I can remember just feeling so much weight lifted off my shoulders. Yeah. And so a lot of the memories, like in my household, because things were quite turbulent in the household that I grew up in, I would just like lock myself behind anywhere and just write music and sing. And that was the only way I knew how to deal and process my emotions. I never spoke to anyone. I never spoke of my emotions. I always presented like, you know, I'm a strong person. I don't need to deal with this stuff. But all of that came through the music I was writing and through the stuff I was composing. So for me, that is a direct product of my traumas, etc.
Thank you. Tommy, Tamanai. Real quick, everybody. What's your healing art?
I have a few. Writing, I wrote a children's book when I was going through some trauma with my body and my reproductive health. And so writing, creative writing, poetry that I don't really, usually I don't share poetry, but I have poetry, and I'm developing more in terms of being a vocalist. I recently started touring the city just here in Boston with Miranda Ray. She's a soul and R&B singer-songwriter, and that's kind of been, I'm in the midst of like a lot of my stuff, a lot of my trauma. I'm like, it's in real time for me. Yeah. This isn't really, it's not 10 years old or more. A lot of it is right now. So what I did was I just started volunteering my time to help whoever had needed help with like vocal work for and that's really become my thing right now.
Thank you. Shout out to my sister that just joined us. Says Queen Nivea. People say we can do the same.
Hi.
I'm gonna mute you though. I'm not unsilencing you just for the moment. Just for the moment. Don't look at me in that tone of voice. Linda.
Hi. So my circles came directly out of trauma. I started drawing them, I think, in 2009. And actually, shout out to my friend Heather in the audience who has seen my entire journey. But I started drawing them as a way to stay sane. Right around was like 2009. I'd been kicked out of basically of my grad program. My department dissolved with me in it. So yeah, I started drawing circles. It was actually an elementary school project that I remembered many years later. So just sort of to everyone in terms of like what I do is accessible to everyone. You just draw concentric circles with a compass and you fill in those spaces however you want. So I fill in the spaces how I want, and that's what you see.
Amen.
But yeah, I initially started drawing sort of the circular art to stay sane. And then it just became like, and it's still a place where like I'll wrestle my demons, like especially if it's a piece that takes many months to make, I will be wrestling out my demons on the canvas. So yeah.
Yeah. Jasmine, thank you. Jasmine.
So there's a lot, so I'll just go through. Number one, when I was very young, very, very young, like maybe 9 or 10, songwriting off of the bat, because Jill Scott was like my biggest inspiration, and I was really close to committing suicide. I was thinking about it a lot. There's a lot going on, and I just remembered how Jill Scott, how she would speak, how she would write, and not coincidentally, I don't think so. I don't think any of this was coincidental, but I was on the brink of doing it, and there was a pad and a pen on the floor. When I looked to my left, and I was like, let me try to write it down. Let me try a different alternative. And before God was God for me, music was God. So songwriting saved my life. So that's definitely something that helped me through my mental, physical, emotional trauma. Now it's also vocal arranging. I love vocal arranging because sounds and sonics has always been a thing that I've loved. I love to hear different tones and notes and hear them together, and it would soothe me, and I would listen to my own stuff over and over and over to heal myself. Not even only because I liked it, but because it was something that healed me a lot. So yeah, definitely music in all forms. Drawing was super huge and is still huge in my life. As everybody was speaking, I was drawing just because it helps for me to like understand what everyone's saying, and then also to soothe me at the same time. Kind of weird, yeah. But yeah. So all music in all forms, drawing, and helping others is, I guess, I feel like is an art. I think I do that to heal myself as well. As someone said it. So yeah.
Thank you, baby. Anna.
I'd say for me, it's definitely writing, and I don't really say much in my poetry, but I write a lot, and I do a little bit of spoken word, but very little. And then also I would say dance, but for me, healing is more a lot more taking classes versus teaching it, because it lets me be more introspective and not outward.
Totally understood. Thank you, Mama. I'm trying to decide how to do this. I want to hear Danielle and Yvette, but I think I'll do it this way. Danielle, tell us what your healing art is, and then show us what you do. And then I'm going to ask Yvette that you do the same, because I'm also watching the time and I want to be mindful. Let me just ask this. Those of you who are witnessing, can you let me know if this is something you'd want to see again? So do that chat and tell us if you would gather with us again, because I'm gonna have to bring it to a close. And okay, amen, amen, amen. I see. Okay, thank you. So we'll there are many more topics that we can talk about, and I want to honor them and not rush through them. So prayerfully there'll be a part 2. Danielle, what is your healing art? And then show us how you get down.
Yes.
So my healing art from a very young age has always been poetry and creative storytelling. I think I was always looking to escape something. And so I would make up these worlds. And I think, you know, if I were really to think about it, I think it was a lot of escaping just the heaviness of being a Black woman and a Black child, because I feel like, you know, as Black children, a lot of our innocence is stolen from us at a very young age. You know, I remember learning so many adult lessons so young so that I could be protected when out and about.
Yeah.
So I would write a lot. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized that my mom shared with me that she, unbeknownst to me at the time, she was a poet. She didn't pursue creative writing, but she had these books of poetry that she had written and printed out. And so I kind of, you know, got my creative risk-taking spirit from her. And it didn't even occur to me, like y'all said songwriting, it didn't even occur to me that one could write songs, because I grew up learning classical music. So I thought that all the music had already been pre-written by old white men who were dead. So that never occurred to me until I started getting into hip hop. And I was just, I was amazed by the concise storytelling abilities of the Notorious B.I.G. I inhaled.
Where's he from though? But where is he from though?
Okay. You know, but Jersey got Queen Latifah and Lauren,
right.
Rod Digger.
All right, that's not what we're doing right now. That's not what we're doing right now.
No, we're really from.
You were saying.
Okay, I'm just saying. I'll say okay, from Brooklyn. But yeah, so that was my whole kind of making the shift from writing to writing music to writing raps. And so then that became how I wanted to tell my stories and things like that. And so now I will rap for you. So this song is called...
She's doing that, please. Thank you.
Huh?
I was just asking that we mute so we could focus on you.
Okay. So the name of the song is called Make Love. I'm just doing a little excerpt of it, just one verse. the song is about healing through love, and I go through just a general sense of love, love of women and love of men. And so, yeah, so I'll sing the chorus just so you can have some context a little bit. Love's what we need if we gon' ever be free. Open your heart and believe. Let me show you the way you make love. Love's what we need if we want people to see. Stand up and sing it with me. Let me show you the way you make love. Pac said that we all came from a woman, got our name from a woman, and I came from a woman. Then tell me, why do we shame our women, victim blame our women, and defame our women? Got the nerve to underpay our women and then refuse to educate our women. Damn, I think it's time we start respecting our women, start protecting our women, start electing more women. And if you believe the first woman was Eve, remember she's from Adam's rib, not from his feet, which means that the vision isn't submission, but standing equally with them in ability and wisdom. I know that there's a lot of hate, but don't forsake love. Don't know how long it's gonna take, but it's gonna take love. If it's a change we need to make love. Ladies, teach them how to make love. And say love's what we need if we gonna ever be free. Come on and open your heart. Let me show you. Love's what we need if we want people to see. Oh, come on and sing it with me. Let me show you the way we make love.
Get him!
Period!
Period! Yes! Yes!
Say really quickly.
Yes.
Song. Okay, I was high key singing.
Can I just say we need to check the chat room. And by the way, what up, Chelsea? Check the chats, y'all. There's been some beautifulness happen in the chat. Sorry, I've acknowledged everyone.
I'm missing it. But that's it. I just love it. I remember when I first heard it, and it was at Nedelka. Nedelka, you had an event. It was something that it was another event that you had. And I went, and I was like, Anyway, I'm a fan.
So good.
Thank you.
And so Chelsea saying happy birthday, because that's happening tomorrow. Just to reiterate, 2 days ago was Linda's birthday. Tomorrow is Danielle's birthday. And on Wednesday is Joanne's birthday. So shout out. And then there's a bunch of Leos in the house, and Naledi, I'm not sure when your birthday is.
Hello? Yes.
You know what it is. You know what it is.
And I'm just gonna rep the Aries as well. Aries season. Ow.
Okay,
that's right.
You got that. There's some stubborn Capricorns in here too, but I'm not gonna say.
Not stubborn.
Don't unmute yourself. Do not unmute yourself and come from me in this room.
Exactly. Now that I figured out how to unmute myself, thank you.
Not the head bob.
For a second. Excuse my lateness. I was on my 4th nap and then realized I was late. Hello, ladies.
Happy to see you. You're the only one that broke protocol and started speaking. I just want to let y'all know that.
Sorry.
Love you. Yvette, before we come to you and before we do close out, can we get Tammy in?
Hi. Hello.
With your poem.
Yes.
I'm muting.
Okay. Give me one moment. My daughter's eating from me. Hold on. Just a moment. Mommy, here. Let me say hello. Say, my name is Naima Asada. And I see your Asada poster, Yvette. That makes me so happy. Oh. Okay. So I wrote this poem a year ago. So so the feelings, the emotions are all still very raw, very here. I'm gonna share this. Hopefully, she wants paper, so I'm just gonna hand it to her. She can have her own piece of paper. I haven't titled the poem yet.
I'm just gonna say while you are getting ready that some people, they're like, oh, there's a baby. Anywhere I am, babies are welcome. So I just want to say that. So for anyone that feeling, you know, I don't know, I don't think anyone here would feel that, but babies are welcome. Okay, I'm muting.
Thank you for welcoming Naima. At 2:30 a.m., I wept angrily for the boy trapped in the man. I fought legions of demons. I was pleading to keep them away. They attacked only more, with greater force. They were here to stay. He wanted to love me. That's what he said. No one would love me like he did. He said that my love was his lifeline, but there was nothing I could give him to bring him peace. I could barely find my own. I had a girl trapped inside too. She wanted to be good, please the world, so they could somehow smile and say, she's so good. What a sweet girl. We have seeds now, too. To my daughter, to my son, to my children to come. Don't be like me, a casualty of the war inside your lover's mind. I love y'all. Thank you
for sharing. Thank you for sharing. I forgot that I was muted. Thank you, baby. And thank you for being vulnerable. Peace. That's real. Yvette, what's your healing art?
You know, I have been writing since I was a child. You know, as much as an extrovert I am, I'm an introvert in my thoughts. So kept journals and diaries since I can remember. And then when I came here and wasn't able to sort of express all this anger and this sadness that I was feeling, I started to write even more. My first short essay was published in the, you know, I had gotten stuff published before, but in the Sojourner Women's Forum newspaper that was out of here in Boston. And that piece was then extended into the book, The Afro-Latino Reader, History and Culture in the US. And I started blogging in 2008 when I started traveling around the diaspora, specifically Latin America and the Caribbean, to Black communities in Latin America and the Caribbean due to my role at the Red de Mujeres Afro. And it became sort of another way. I started to realize that people were having such a hard time seeing me and hearing it coming out of my mouth that I had to find other ways to do that and still stay true to it. And that's when I started writing, the blogging. But then, you know, in thinking about today, I'm going to read two. I don't want to speak much. I'm going to let the two pieces speak for it, because then I went back to the first time I realized that I had the skill to at least put something down short and still have the point be made. And this poem comes from being invited to a national Latino meeting where they tell us over and over again that everybody attending is from Latin America and the Caribbean, and what are we gonna do about racial equity and da-da-da. So I'm thinking, geez, this should be 3 days of not explaining myself. I get on the flight, you know, so I go sort of not on guard because I'm thinking I'm not gonna have to explain myself, because clearly everyone knows that everyone that's being invited is connected to the culture and from Latin America and the Caribbean, so I don't have to. As soon as I get on the second flight that takes us to the conference where most of the folks that are attending are there waiting, no one speaks to me. But then these two men enter behind me and they sit behind me. And the first thing out of their mouth is, ¿Quién es ella? Ella sabe dónde está. Like, who is she? Does she know where she is? And I was absolutely broken in that moment. And the only thing that saved me from turning around and saying something to them was my pen and paper. And I wrote this. Do you see me? the me that embraces her full self. You have no idea that I understand your words. ¿Quién es ella? I acknowledge you, yet I am invisible in your eyes and mine. You turn away to not be reminded of your roots. What roots, you say? The roots that challenge your white privileged mind. The roots that built the country that you stand and say, Latino presente. The day you see me is the day the chains of colonialism will be removed from your mind. On that day, you will embrace the Tio that your family disowned. On that day, I will sit with you and say, you hurt me, but I forgive you. And maybe, hopefully, on that day, you will see me. And that became one of my first published pieces. And it was there that then it opened up. And then in the last 2 years, I have been sweetly challenged by someone that's on here, Anna, when she invited me to perform at Yo Soy Lola. So now I'm in this place that I'm unapologetic about my poetry. I'm more direct about it. I'm more intentional about it. I'm more embracing of my own art and not comparing myself to others. And this has become one of my favorite pieces. I wrote this last year around the same time because I've come full circle to this place that I don't give a hoot if you like me. I don't give a hoot if you invite me. When you do, I'm still gonna show up the same way I was 20 years ago, but now I'm doing it with a little song here and a poem here, but the message is still the same. And when I arrive there, I sit in this absolute clarity of what it means to be Black and not have to hyphenate it. I am a Black Panamanian. I am a an Afro-descendant woman. I'm an African woman and all that comes with it. And I wrote this piece when I realized that I don't need to use the terms that other people want me to use because Panama, Latina, whatever, it still names Blackness to me. So this is the piece that I wrote. I rise up in Blackness. I kneel before them and gather strength and resiliency for Blackness. I clean and shine up Blackness. I dress to express Blackness. I dress to express pride and joy of Blackness. I move with melodic Blackness. I sing Blackness. I dance to celebrate Blackness. I speak truth with Blackness. I've been knocked down because of Blackness, but yet I get back up in the spirit of warriors with Blackness. I breathe in fire with Blackness. I spit out honey with Blackness. Blackness is not diluted because I speak Spanish. Colón is Blackness. I learn pain from Blackness. I make sweet love with Blackness. I found light in Blackness. Dept showed up with Blackness. I welcome the spirits of whispers of Blackness. I love unconditionally because of Blackness. I fight for Blackness. I cry for Blackness. I fist up for Blackness. I stand tall with Blackness. My crown is extended with Blackness. I give thanks to Blackness. I smile joy for Blackness. I love from the soul with Blackness. I am unapologetic about Blackness. I fell in love with sweet Blackness. I live Blackness. Pause. I don't rise up with Blackness. Blackness rises me up because I am Blackness.
Ashe.
Woo!
Ashe.
So, you know, the art has begun, it's still what the journey is to raise the voices of the ancestors, speak to those whose shoulders, speak for those whose shoulders I stand on, and speak my own truth.
Period. So it's 8 o'clock. Can you take us out? Thank you, Yvette.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mama. Can I say something before you take us out? Can I say something before you take us out? I just want to offer gratitude to the 8 women that joined me. I'm just going in the order that I see it on my screen. Naledi, thank you. Danielle, thank you. Yvette, thank you. Anna, thank you. Linda, thank you. Joanne, thank you. Jasmine, thank you. Tammy, thank you. Did I miss someone? And then let me just go through the people who are present. My sister Nivea, Thank you. Mark Zaleski, what up? Thank you. I see Zevi Steinitz. Sorry if I'm saying this wrong. Tracy, Dave, what up? Norval, Linda, thank you, mama. Zaid, Heather, thank you. Matt, thank you, bruh. Robin, hey, baby. Tyler, what up, man? Authentically Bravo. Maylena, como tu ta? Coco. And I think this is someone representing Masacote here. And Chelsea, what up, queen? Thank you, everybody. Yvette, please take us out, and then I'm gonna play the last song on my EP, and we'll do this another time. Stay tuned for invitations. Yvette.
So also, 1 second, sorry to cut in for a moment. Is it also possible just like for people to put in the chat, like how to get in touch with you too? Just because I think I would love that.
Thank you. Please do. Please.
So, you just gave, so shout out to everyone that listened, and actually you just named, so my family that's out there, Zaid, Tracy, and everybody else, but another art form is the art expression of hair. And I want to give a shout out to my friend and hairdresser, Tracy, who's on, who my art is also my visual, how I dress and how I wear my hair and what I wear is an extension of my artistic form. And I give thanks that she has joined me on this journey. Nedelka, thank you for bringing us together, for creating this space, for allowing all of us to come together in this very authentic, organic way to speak our truth. Thank you, my queens, for sharing your voice. One of the things that I've been thinking about that I wanted to pose, but I know we don't have that much time, was to ask the question of a poem that I've been working on since we've been sort of in this new normal of staying in, is how will we emerge from all of this and what will we create during these times? But we don't have the time to answer that. But I would love for you to sit with it, and maybe we can come back to that in our next part. But what word are we walking away with after tonight's experience? What is the energy, the vibe, the word, the affirmation that we take with us tonight, and that we share out with those who have joined us? So Naledi, if you want to start.
Is this open to everybody present?
We don't, I don't think we have that time, but I think, we can start with us first, and then, we can see who else can join in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what word are you walking away with? What vibe are you leaving with tonight?
I don't think it's a word. It's more of a phrase, an affirmation. I deserve to be heard, and I deserve to take up space, and that space is appreciated and needed in this world. Yeah.
Danielle?
Let me UnSilenced. I think the word that came to me as you were asking the question was literally to just speak. Period.
Yeah. Anna?
Connection. Connection.
Joanne?
Dreams.
Jasmine?
Perspective.
And Linda?
Kindness.
And
Both for self and for everyone else.
Nice. Nedelka, yours?
Unity.
And my word is depth. I think tonight we showed the depth that we move with, that speaks to why we are still rising and why we are still standing in our given light. We showed the depth of our artistic spirit in this conversation tonight. So giving thanks for this gift that we gave ourselves and we gave those who joined us during these times. And we look forward to doing more of these, Nedelka, right? We want to do this again.
Amen.
So give thanks, peace and blessings, bendiciones a todos,
Bendiciones.
alafia, and we will see you, soon. Be well.
God bless.
Amen. Taking you guys out on a song, I think. You can feel free to go. I'm just going to try and play. Don't want to hold you, but thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
This song is dedicated
Can you hear it?
to the warriors.
Yep.
To those of us that keep rising and moving forward in spite of our past. Remember, no weapon formed against you shall prosper.
Amen.
With no sense of worth, no identity, she was robbed of her peace of mind by a lady's and abuse. Time after time, she'd sit and imagine what life would be. Without trauma, there was no more free from agony. But over the years, the hurt inside, her broken pieces with the world would collide. But oh, she knew that the day she'd be victorious, she knew that she held the key to her soul's liberty. She knew, so she set us all free, to bring balance to my life, restore my energy. To take charge of my peace, restore my sanity. To heal my soul so I feel whole.
Thank you, everybody. You can find my music on Bandcamp, Nedelka Prescod. I tried to paste the link in, didn't work, but you can find me on Bandcamp. Tammy wanted to say her word.
Sorry, I was gonna send it in the group. I was trying to send it in the group chat. Okay. Shine, okay. And to be unapologetically unsilenced.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. Thank you, everybody. I'm gonna close out. Be well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
I can't wait till we get to actually physically be in the same space. Love you guys. Bye.
Yes.
Yes. Bye.
Thank you.